Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Sister Circle After Show. Again, we get into some really in-depth conversation and would hate for anyone to not feel like they can't be themselves within these support groups. So we don't record that session, but we do record this one so that you don't miss out. My name is Erin Relford, and I am a board member on Sister Circle Media. And Jennifer, I will allow you to introduce yourself.
Hi guys, my name is Jennifer Anderson. I have the distinct pleasure of working with Sister Circle Media in the space that Erin was talking about called Sister Circle for the Soul, where I host and am executive producer. And so really, it's really an opportunity for all of us to get together. And it's very, very close to my heart because business strategy and personal development and living on purpose is what I live for. That's the space that I love and I own, and I want to help other people thrive to get to their spaces that they love and that they own. So today we're going to talk about what we were discussing in the Sister Circle for the Soul space, and that is walking in your authority. How did you think it went, Erin? What were your thoughts?
I loved this month's topic and discussion. Listen, last month was great too. I think they're always great, but today was, I think everybody got a little bit of fruit, walked away with some edification because we all don't walk in authority in the same ways as we learned on the call. Yes. What did you think about today's discussion?
I think, Sister Circle for the Soul is consistent, right? It's where we talk about what's relevant on our heart. And because it is that safe place, it's not recorded. People share what's on their heart. And because of that, we went all over the place, but in very relevant, deep and meaningful places. And, a lot of people shared what was deep in their heart that they wouldn't have shared in a public place. But to your point, I think there were many gems dropped, and we all walked away better understanding what walking in authority means for us, what those blockers are to walking in authority, and what we're looking to do next with this new found revelation.
Absolutely. You said something about consistency, and you're right. Sister Circle for the Soul has always been consistent, just in the sense of everyone walking away with something that they feel like they've gotten an in-depth message and also in-depth community and conversation. But along the lines of consistency, so we talked about standing in alignment and also ability and authority and how they kind of go hand in hand. Can you talk about how we just set the stage in terms of defining what authority means?
Exactly. I think, just like with the human language, we all have different perceptions and perspectives on what words mean. And so it was really, really important that we kind of anchor ourselves with defining what is walking in authority. And we heard a number of different definitions that I think are all relevant. I think the two themes that really came out was how are we expressing ourselves fully, and how we express ourselves fully, right? So one person was talking about living on purpose and driving and striving towards their goals and what they feel like they're meant to do on the planet. And by living on purpose, living purposefully, they're walking in authority. Then we had another young lady talk about, walking in authority is also how you do it, meaning what is true to you, and you're walking in that regardless of some kind of outside validation. Right. You're walking in there knowing that, hey, I may take some criticism and I'm open-minded, but I'm not going to get shook. Right. I'm still going to show up intentionally. And so I think that really covers the gambit of what walking in authority means, not just defining it, but how do we walk in it every day consistently. And that was the next thing that was something that came up in the conversation.
So I think it's interesting that when we talk about shaking the table, right? Things that you aren't necessarily rooted in. Another way or means of looking at that is purpose and intention, right? And we're all familiar with what those two things mean. Tell us a little bit, or I guess kind of separate the two for us. What does that necessarily mean for you in terms of purpose and intention?
Absolutely. So to me, purpose for me is always like a vision. It's always like understanding your goals, understanding why you're on the planet, understanding what you're meant to do or what gives you passion.
Yeah.
And then I think intention is, how are you going to get there? How are you aligning yourself in your actions and your deeds and your words and all of that, seen and unseen, to get you to where you want to go? And to me, intention is the gas to your purpose, right? So if purpose is the vehicle, then intention is the gas. And I think you need both.
I'm walking with that one. I like that. Okay.
Absolutely. So you need both in order to live on purpose. Absolutely.
Man, Jennifer, I'm gonna have to write that one down. I gotta write. Pause for a second. No.
Pause. Little Jeopardy.
I know, right? I think what's purposeful in this conversation that we talked about, and then also during Sister Circle for the Soul, was duality, and how we tend to dilute our messaging and our narrative, because I can be strong in one area, but poor in the other, but like how we're measuring that. And that's what we mean by duality. You want to speak on that for a second?
Absolutely. So, one of the things, like you said, when we were talking about walking in authority, after we defined it and understood what that was for us in the room, the next question driving the conversation was, do we feel that we walk in authority in all facets of our life? Now, when that question was drafted, I already knew what the answer, and to no surprise, most people said no. We had a few sage folks in the room who said, yes, I walk in authority in all places and all things. But the majority of the room said no, or they said that they didn't know. And I think the reason why is exactly what you pointed out. There are places where we have confidence, and there are places where we don't. And one of the things that was really important and that came out in the conversation was that you can walk in authority and not always get things right. Yeah. So authority, and we tend to put authority with ability. And really, they don't have to be the same things. Because if we define walking in authority as I show up intentionally as the full expression of myself, sharing my ideas and being open-minded to hearing feedback, that is walking in authority. But I can walk in authority on a subject matter that I may not really know about. And even if I make a mistake, it doesn't mean that I have to shrink back, right? So the question is, how does this duality even exist? How can we be strong in one place and walk in authority, and not strong in another place and not walk in authority? Because we've already figured out that authority and ability, there's a deception there, thinking that you have to have an ability to have an authority. The other thing that we have to address in order to walk in the fullness of our authority is the fact that we have to be very cautious about the narrative in our head, right? So we're confident in one area, and we told ourselves,
I think you refer to it as voicemail in your head.
Yes. What's the voicemail running in your head, right? Because it's that repeat messaging. Oh, I kill it as a parent. Oh, I kill it on the job. Oh, I kill it. And so you walk there thinking that you're not going to make a mistake. And that's why you walk in your power and in your confidence. Yes. But then you go to a place where maybe there was struggle, like in a romance, or for some people on the job, or wherever that is. Right. And because you're already feeding on a defeatist mentality, right? A messaging that you can't do it, or that you're anticipating more mistakes because you're focused on the thing you don't want. You end up shrinking and making yourself small and being afraid to fully show up. So if we can dissect authority from ability and acknowledge that you can walk into a situation expressing your full self, being respectful to those around you while you do it, you don't have to get everything all right to fully show up. And if you think about it, I'm sure we can all think about or recall people in our lives, whether at workplace or whatever, whom we would have said, are they really as smart as they think they are? Are they really as the big cheese as they think they are? But they still show up. because in their mind, they have them showing up fully doesn't mean that they always have to be right. It just means that they're fully present and they're not holding back. And we have to learn that same lesson too.
So we're going to get into showing up, but I don't want to lose what we've already covered because it was important. And that is understanding that a lot of us, speaking for myself especially, we don't always bring our full selves to a situation. And then being purposeful and being intentful means, as far as your ability and your authority and standing in alignment, can look different. Some of us are driving, right? You mentioned purpose and intention in driving, but some of us are walking, some of us are stepping in authority. So it can look different depending on who this person is. So Jennifer, then the conversation took a whole different turn.
Yes, it did.
And
yes, it was relevant.
Like we hit a well, right? There was a gusher of like information and flow that started to happen in the direction of romantic relationships. And we didn't put a plug on it because like there was a lot coming out of it. What were your initial thoughts when the conversation started to turn?
Yeah, I think with a lot of us, as always, and especially during quarantine, relationships are something that are just really big on our hearts. And although it wasn't part of my set of discussion questions, the glory of Sister Circle for the Soul is that it's a free discussion, right? And it's an opportunity for people to talk about what's relevant on their hearts. And so there was a young lady in the midst of talking about walking in authority and how do we balance that? How do we show up in all these situations? She started talking about how she feels that she walks in her authority in all dimensions of her life, her romance, her work, her everything. She's happy, but she's having difficulty walking in authority when it comes to entering into marriage and having children. And it was a really heartfelt moment, a very vulnerable and honest moment, because she talked about relationships that she had considered to be failed relationships. I didn't think they were, but they didn't work out the way that she wanted. And that was how she was defining it. And my initial thought was, wow, this is why we're here. It wasn't planned, but this is why we're here. And although some people may have thought, well, is this walking in your authority, like in the workplace? Well, no, but people are being honest. So let's address it. And we started addressing it by saying that in order to walk in your authority, and this relates to her, you've really got to know your why and your values and what you want and why you want it. Yeah. And when you're able to define that for yourself, it's easier to say yes to what is right for you and no to what is not right for you. Because we definitely, as we're walking out our authority and our purpose, we want to ensure that everyone around us who's connected to us, they're doing the same thing. We don't want anyone to be forced into something that they're not comfortable with.
Definitely.
So our advice was really understanding what our core values to her, and that she does have choices that she can make. She's not as stuck as she feels.
Right.
And I think that was the source of her hurt and frustration, that she was feeling stuck.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a conversation that I would have taken off into like one of my one-on-one sessions to just kind of get into that and the overall gambit of relationships and work and career and whatnot. But that's what we do. And I think she walked away with more food for thought and understanding what more she needed to add to her life so that she could really understand her whys and understand how she wanted to move forward.
Yeah, I think the whole conversation kind of turned when someone asked, well, how can I stop settling, right? And again, going back to this walking in authority situation. And I like what one of the married members mentioned. She said, well, it comes down to principles versus preferences.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna let you elaborate on that.
Yeah, you know what? It really plays off of what we were talking about with the other young lady and the relationships. In order to not settle, you have got to know what you really want. And I say this a lot of times, one of the saddest things that I see is where people are the victims of opportunities. What does that mean? That means that you're going about, you haven't defined your life. People look at you and say, oh, you can fit here and you can fit there, and you just go. But
Yeah.
you haven't defined, what do you really want? So the first thing that we have to do in order to not settle is, what do we really want? And in order to understand what we really want, right, this goes into principles versus preferences.
Yeah.
We need to understand, what are our core values, right? What are those things that we are actually founded on? What are our principles?
Yeah.
And to define what that looks like, and to define what that is. And yes, life comes, but the how it looks might be different than we had thought, but when it comes to the principle, that should be rock solid. And then the other things where we may need to compromise on, come to the middle on, those are like the preferences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, brunette versus redhead, right hand versus left hand, like all that kind of stuff. Those are preferences. Those are not going to necessarily get in the way of where we know we want to go.
Right.
But that's why it's super key to know the differences between our principles and our preferences, in order to know when we are settling and versus when we're getting exactly what we've set out to do, accomplish, have.
That's right. And a good example of that is you and I both, as natural hair women, like both a bomb. Like that's a principle just on notice. It's both a bomb. But the preference in how we wear our hair may be different. Right.
Absolutely.
This was my favorite part of the conversation, because it was a matter of thinking about, okay, I need to have standards, but also it's okay to compromise. And it really came up in like, well, when do you know when to compromise? And that's when we really got into the conversation about principles. Jennifer, so in the sense of when we talk about, I believe it was Tanisha that mentioned being present. And one of the members started to talk about meditation and in the different ways of how we live in the now. And someone asked, like, well, how do we do that? And I believe you said, be quiet. Can you talk about what it means to be still?
Absolutely. So all of this relates in the sense of walking in your authority means really knowing who you are, showing up intentionally, understanding your core values. And in order to do that, you're not going to find that on TV. You're not going to find that chasing a whole bunch of things, right? You might get inspired, but at the end of the day, who you're trying to meet, who you're chasing, is your true self. And so in order to understand who you are and what is most important to you, you have to just quiet down.
Yeah. Let's just pause for that. You said you're really chasing yourself.
Yes.
All right. Go write that one down too in the replay.
Yes, silly goose. Yeah, you're chasing yourself. So even when it's from the not settling to the I want to be a mother and have children, which resonated with a lot of women in the room, to you know, how do I do this walking in authority thing? It just, all of it comes down to identity.
Yeah.
And you've got to be quiet to understand what is being said to you, to understand what is really your want to.
Yeah.
Right? What is your why? And you're able to better identify that when you are just with you, not in the midst of so much distraction.
So Jennifer, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you.
Throw it, girl.
So you talk about you have to be quiet enough to hear it. Can you speak on how do you know when it's the right voice? Because we just got through talking about voicemails, right? How do you know when it's the right voice talking to you?
Absolutely. So let me sit on that because I have an immediate answer, but I want to I want to make sure that I'm approaching this in a way that makes sense for most. Let me tell you my experience and then a principle. We'll do by that. We'll do it that way. Let me get my English right. So I personally operate within, I'm spiritual. I believe in being quiet. I believe in praying. I believe in all of that. And I operate in a Christ framework. And it was as I drew closer to Christ and was in the Word and actually had a relationship, not with just words on a page, but with the actual person of God, of Jesus, that was how I understood why I was here, who I was, why I was made, and basing everything on love and justice and doing right by people.
Mm-hmm.
And by me understanding that that is good and that is right, and adopting those things and realizing that that's how I want to live my life, I was able to measure everything against that.
Yeah.
And that's how I was able to understand my identity and my values and how I want to move forward. And I think that in that process of also doing that, I found my want to.
Mm-hmm.
I found my own voice. I found my own opinion. And I think that when you're quiet, really quiet, and you really get to know yourself
Mm-hmm.
and not the voices of all these other people around you,
Yeah.
Ideas that surround love and ideas that are inspiring and aspirations that are deep and not shallow or superficial, those are the ones that you can trust. If I just want to get promoted because I want the title of director, take a couple extra seconds on that and think, do you want the title, or do you want the responsibility of people and to help them grow and to help them go to their better places of thriving? Like, what is motivating you? And as you're able to sit and be quiet, you can literally start to sift this out and really test the integrity of your intentions.
Yeah.
If it's not in the promotion of people and love and goodness, that it's something to second guess.
Keep the treasure, do away with the junk, right? Let the junk sift through. That makes tons of sense.
Yeah, and that's natural for any human being, right? Because sometimes I just want the cheesecake because I want the cheesecake. My feelings got hurt, you know? But then sometimes when I'm able to quiet down and go, I don't need the red velvet cheesecake. I just need a hug. So let me just slow down, right? Yeah. We all have to be in touch with our emotions and our intentions to really understand, do we want to go in the direction that it's leading us or a different path?
Yeah, and just to recap regurgitate what you just said, is simply, if Jesus isn't your homeboy and you didn't get what Jennifer just said, right? It's taking that principle of love and starting with a foundation of love, right? Figure out the definition, what love actually means, and you really find the root of everything there.
Right. And with that, to just add on, make sure that you're on that list of love, because sometimes we want to give it out to so many other people, and we forget we need to give it to ourselves first. Because when we love ourselves first, that puts on the 2020 vision to properly see other people, to properly set boundaries within our lives, to properly create a setting and to protect a setting that allows us to thrive, and to ensure that we're not just letting toxic things into our life that would thwart us from our purpose, our destiny, our ability to help others and to love ourselves.
Amen. Speaking of 2020 vision, most of us are ready for 2020 to be over.
Ooh, Lord.
I just want to tell everyone who did listen to the recap of today's show, thank you so much for tuning in. I do want to say that, as mentioned, as 2020 has become such a tumultuous year, do know that Jennifer is available for one-on-ones if you don't like the support group setting. And Jennifer, tell us how we can reach you.
Absolutely. You can reach me on all social media platforms. I'm really heavy on LinkedIn and Instagram, but my handle is right below. It's at Jen Anderson I am. So yeah, feel free to contact me directly. And I do free consultations, which is just an opportunity for us to see what's going on within your world, your landscape. What are some of those blockers? Kind of give you an opportunity to see what's going on with you, to give you some initial game plans, and then we can see if we want to continue this journey together. So yes, definitely available. And I would say, yes, 2020 has been tumultuous. I would also say that 2020 has done what it promised to do. And I think for a lot of people, we could say that this year has given us a lot of vision about ourselves, about the people around us, about systems that need to come down and get changed,
Mm.
ourselves and how we need to show up differently, people that we may have thought were friends and maybe they're not. I think it has given some people, it's been a lot of loss and it's been a lot of hurt.
Yeah.
But I think that there's an opportunity to see some blessings in all the melee, right? What did you call it? Digging out the treasure from the dirt. I
Yeah.
think there's definitely been some treasures in 2020.
Absolutely. Oh, I take nothing from it, right?
Yep.
So for everyone else, my name is Erin. I am with Sister Circle Media. Do please join us on Instagram. The handle is right in front of you. We do this every month. And in addition to that, we also hold Instagram Lives, and we have new programming coming your way really, really soon. So make sure that you join our newsletter to find out when those things happen. It's been great, Jennifer.
Always.
I will talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.